automate this process, build this Claude skill, systemize your business so you can make millions of dollars would never work again. It sounds great to build systems that make it so you have to work less, but that also sounds like 17 more things that they need to add to their to-do list and then inevitably feel behind on. I have to admit that as an operations and system consultant who creates content, I'm a little bit a part of the problem. But part of the reason I talk about this so often is because I've seen the relief that happens in a business owner's eyes when a system they built actually starts to work and they get time back to go actually make it to that workout class in the middle of the day. Or when they realize that drafting the video that they're gonna film took half the time that it did the week before. So in today's video, I wanna give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of how the sausage is made as somebody who spends a lot of their days building these systems. The main reason that nobody's talking about why this feels difficult for many business owners. And then at the end, I'm gonna talk about the 3 real options you have as a real life business owner with a real life day-to-day on how not to feel overwhelmed by all this hoopla that you're seeing so that you can leave this video with actionable next steps about how you want to move forward. And if insights about operations and systems for your business is something that'd be useful for you, we'd love if you hit subscribe down below. Let's be honest, systems is a little bit of a buzzword these days, and it's often used interchangeably with words like processes and tools and resources. But these things don't mean the same thing, and it's important for you to understand if you're trying to build those elusive systems in your business. So bear with me for a minute while I walk you through the difference between these really quickly. A process is a repeatable set of steps that it takes to complete a job or a project. Think like a recipe for cookies. It has sift flour, measure liquid ingredients, mix, put on a baking sheet, and bake. There can be minor variations within a process and still have it be a coherent thing, like switching out walnuts for chocolate chips. But when too many steps of the process start to change, it's often better off for it to be a unique process of its own. A tool, on the other hand, is a resource that you can use to execute either individual steps or multiple steps of a process. And it's important to know that some tools can be used to complete multiple different processes or multiple different types of tasks. If we're sticking with our baking example here, let's think about something like a cake pan. It can be used to make a chocolate cake, or it can be used to make a carrot cake. A whisk can be used to mix up the wet ingredients in a cake, but it can also be used to mix up eggs and fixins to go in an omelet, or ingredients for a vinaigrette. The tool is not specific to the individual task or the process. It can be kind of flexible and deployed in a bunch of different ways. One of the most common mistakes I see people make is confusing tools with processes, especially as it relates to software. Asana is a tool. It can be used for lots of different tasks and processes, just like that whisk. So having Asana set up doesn't necessarily mean that you have a process or a larger system in your business. It just means you have access to a tool. And then finally, we have systems. Systems are a whole framework for how a job or project is completed, which includes the process and the tools used to execute that process, but it also includes larger context like the who, when, and where of that process. So who completes it, when is it done, and where are various things saved at the beginning, middle, or end of that process. A professional bakery probably has a system for making chocolate cakes for clients. It's not just a recipe, and it's not just a whisk or a baking pan. They know who's making the cake, when they need to start making said cake. They know who's baking that cake on a Tuesday versus a Saturday. They know where to find the whisk and the baking pan that they need to make that cake. And yes, they know the recipe for the cake. Systems help you get more done in your business because they eliminate 2 of the biggest issues that business owners face: decision making and communication failure. When you have a good system in place, you don't have to decide on the process that you're gonna run or who's gonna own it or where that file is going to be saved. Because it's already decided on, you can jump straight into execution and get more done. Systems also help because they eliminate communication failures, either between you and your team, you and your client, or even between 2 different technology tools. A well-built system standardizes and often automates steps of the process. So there's less risk of a client not being clear that the delay in their timeline would lead to a delay in the deliverables, or cash flow not coming in because an invoice didn't get paid by a certain time of the month. By having a clear system with clear who, when, wheres, and standard ways that processes operate, you can ensure that things get done on more predictable timelines without you having to manage the decision making and the communication of this process every time you're running your way through it. Here's a couple of real life examples of what this looks like for me. Before I built my bookkeeping system, I had to remember to log my expenses every Friday. Now on a normal Friday, this worked fine, and I would go review my credit card charges and I would log them all into my spreadsheet. But because this manually relied on me remembering and me completing a manual process, there were occasions where it fell through the cracks, like if I was taking a long weekend and wasn't sitting at my computer every Friday. When I built a system, I determined where the information lived, that it was coming from, where I needed it to go, in what format, and on what timing. And I was able to use a tool like Zapier to automate the process of data going from here to here in certain formats, so that now when I sit down to review my bookkeeping, a lot of the early steps of this process have already been completed. And the only things that I have to manage are the things that I need to be involved because of the decision making and context that I have that no technology tool would. Or in my personal life, before I built my meal planning system, when it was time to go grocery shopping, I had to think about what my schedule was for the week, what recipes I wanted to cook, and then I had to go pull the individual recipes, aggregate all the ingredients, and write out a grocery shopping list. Then I built my meal planning system in a skill in Claude, and through this I can go back and forth, discuss my needs for the week, pick out recipes, and it knows where to look in my computer to find where all my recipes are saved. We can decide on what I want to make, and it aggregates the list for me, delivering a clear and easy grocery shopping list that I can execute without having to do the decision making live walking around the produce section. As a result, grocery shopping is faster and I spend less time meal planning because I standardized steps in the process. I deployed the right tool in order to give me the result that I wanted. Less decision making than was required before. It's easy to say you're building a system, but it's not actually going to save you time unless you're clear on the job or the goal that the system is trying to achieve, the process that's required to achieve that goal, what tools you currently use to complete it and their potential shortcomings, and where this process is typically run, and what is or isn't working about that, and common issues that come up in this process and how to escalate them. Which brings us to why building systems feels so hard for many business owners. We all want to have systems in our business that make things more efficient. If you're a floral designer, you probably want to spend your time putting together bouquets, not running payroll or drafting Instagram captions. And you built it up using your blood, sweat, and tears to a profitable, successful business. First of all, congrats, you deserve a lot of kudos for that. But it's okay to acknowledge if you got there with hustle and just figuring out as you went, that if you want to bring on more clients or charge more or get more time back, it's also okay to acknowledge that your systems may be non-existent or may really need to evolve. You probably tried installing a software system that was supposed to save you a bunch of time, or you wrote a checklist that then nobody used. And here's the thing, building systems feels hard for a lot of business owners because it's a specific skill set that not a lot of people have. I cannot sing for the life of me. I don't think I'm a failure because of it. I just choose not to try to be an opera singer. I'm also not good at writing code. There are a ton of resources out there, especially now, that allow for things like vibe coding, where an LLM can get me to a minimum viable product without me having to understand the details of the language of code. But I have to recognize that I'm not deeply fluent in how these coding languages work. And so as a result, there's a limit to the complexity that I'll be able to build, and I'm going to be way worse at spotting problems or building the fundamental structure of this to be scalable over time because I don't have the deeper understanding of that skill itself. If building systems hasn't worked for you, I don't want you to accept that your business is just going to have to be the way that it is, or that you can't build systems, or that it's always going to be just this manual hustle culture. There is another way, which brings us to the 3 options that you have in deciding what you want to do as a business owner if building systems has felt hard. Your first option is to accept that you're always going to have to do things manually. You're going to have to hustle, deal with disorganization, and that you just have to accept the limitations to the growth of your business and the impacts on your personal life that come with things running in your business the way that they are right now. Personally, I really hope you don't choose this option. The second option is you can learn the skill of building systems. I'm not gonna lie, there's a decent amount to learn here. You can't draft a recipe for chocolate cake if you don't understand which ingredients leads to things getting crusty or things rising in the oven, and the same is true for processes. If you don't understand what makes something bottleneck or how a marketing platform works, it's going to be very hard to refine a process in it. And in this, it requires a little bit of generalist knowledge. But then you also have to evaluate which tool is the right for you to use for every individual process and system that you build. And you're coming from a starting place of not knowing that much about the tools, and so this can involve a lot of research, digging into, testing tools, and learning from your mistakes. This is basically the DIY option, and you can do it. But you have to recognize, just like I do with vibe coding, that there are going to be compromises in the quality of the output that you generate, and you have to accept the amount of time that it's going to take you away from your actual business to learn and get yourself up to speed on this skill. Or you have our third option, which is you can have a systems expert come in and help you build systems in your business for you. This is what we do at Exhale, my systems consulting firm. We're brought in by service-based business owners who want to be spending time in their business doing the things that they're actually good at. And they also would ideally like time in their life to be able to spend on their personal life. Because we have the skill of building systems, because we've been doing it for years, and experience of having done it for multiple businesses before, we know some of the baseline of which tools are good for which context, where things tend to hit issues. And so as a result, it takes us less time to deliver higher quality of a system because of that background knowledge. And the best part is for the business owner, they don't have to be hands-on keyboard figuring all this out. They can focus on what they're good at while we do the hands-on keyboard work for them. And let's be clear, this isn't specific to Exhale. If you bring in any systems expert, these are some of the values that they're going to be able to offer to you as a business. But just like your time is valuable, so is your money. And so I understand why many business owners are hesitant to invest in a consultant when systems seem basic enough that they could figure it out on their own. I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions on how to figure out if you're at the point where it might really be worth it for you to invest in system support. The first scenario is if you've recently had to turn away business because of your capacity. That's money you could have made that you now can't. Whereas if you invested in getting your systems updated ASAP, you could potentially open up the space in your business to bring in that revenue that would then offset the investment in the expert. The second scenario in which this really might be worth it is if you're about to reach a breaking, whether that's burnout, maternity leave, or a big launch that you're worried about being able to execute because of the amount of time you have available in your business. In these situations, there's an actual cost on the horizon that investing up front could mediate, whether that's your reputation, lost revenue, or your health. If it keeps your business alive or keeps you healthy, it's probably worth it. And the third scenario, when I think it's really the smart decision to make this sort of investment in a specialist, is if you've tried to DIY this a couple times before, your time really is the most valuable thing in your business and in your life. So at some point, recognizing when you need a specialist can be the best investment, because then there's somebody else executing while you have time to go do anything else that's important in your life. And then there's the added benefit of the results of the system when they start working. If you're in one of these situations, it's probably the point to start considering that a specialist is maybe what your business needs in order to scale to the next level. Whether that's Exhale or somebody else you believe you can deliver results, I just hope you get the support you need. And if you're curious about Exhale, definitely head to the link in our description below to book a call. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.